So I know all of you, but for anybody who might watch the recording, or for anybody who is in some of our other communities that might be joining us, my name is Courtney. I am the director of tapestries in our United Methodist Communities Pittman location. I am a social worker by background, and I have a lot of experience in senior care and dementia and mental health and brain injury and basically all things brain related, which is why this is such a passion of mine. So hopefully I can use that experience to give you a little bit of information that's going to help make your lives easier and help you understand your loved ones better. So today, much anticipated, I think, for a great many of us, we're going to be talking about hygiene. I know this is a constant struggle for a lot of our loved ones. So one of the things that I want to lead with is that this might be a little more uncomfortable than some of the other meetings that we've, if only because we don't always get our way. And this may be one of those times where the right course of action may be to make some concessions. And so I just want to kind of lead with that so that you know going into it. So when we think about hygiene concerns with our loved ones, and for the record, I also include diet in that, because often as our loved ones age, we see their diet and their eating preferences and habits change a lot, which can be concerning to us. So we're also going to talk about that a little bit. But as we consider all of those things, we want to make sure that we're taking into consideration privacy concerns. So like, I don't know about you, and you don't have to disclose this, but typically I know I don't have people watching me in the shower or in the bathroom. And that's not a normal experience. And so I imagine it would be pretty uncomfortable for me. And yet we expect our loved ones, when they enter a care environment like this, to accept it as fact. And that may be a difficult thing for some of them. Personal preferences. So this may be they prefer baths over showers or vice versa. They want to do it themselves. They may prefer to have staff help because that feels more natural to them. They may prefer to have family help because that feels more natural to them. There's just a lot of moving pieces. So we always want to take into account personal preferences. We want to keep in mind the person's dignity. Absolutely. And I think this is a tricky subject, because when we think about hygiene and dignity, we think that being clean and presentable and well-dressed and all of that is part of how we maintain our dignity. And so for us in a healthy brain space and at a more capable time in our lives, it's easy for us to get hyperfixated on that. And that may not be what preserves the dignity of our loved one as their priorities change. Because if we're telling them what to do and forcing them to do things that they're not comfortable with, that they're not ready for, it may just take a different tone. And so we're often trying to walk quite the tightrope with regard to how do we make sure that the person is physically healthy and has their physical dignity maintained, but also their emotional dignity, as we're, sometimes truthfully pressuring them to take care of their hygiene in the way that they're not really comfortable with in the moment. And so connected to that is self-determination. I know we've talked a lot in some of our past meetings about providing the opportunity for control whenever we can, because unfortunately with dementia, our loved ones do lose a lot of control as they go. So we want to let them make as many choices for themselves as possible. So this is a big part of it. We definitely want to take into consideration personality changes. So sometimes the person's priorities have changed. And that may be, maybe mom always took a shower first thing in the morning and now she prefers a bath in the evening. It may be that she used to shower every day and now she'd rather every other, or any number of other things. So we want to be asking ourselves, whose priority is this and whose priority are we honoring? And then of course we want to take into consideration safety. So hygiene, I don't think is often a thing we associate with safety. But in, you know, in an environment like this, and especially when we're dealing with older people, there's a lot of overlap, particularly with regard to how we take care of their skin. So we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to go through bathing, grooming, dressing, dieting, hopefully hit all of the areas that you've all been asking for, and help you kind of figure out, where is that line? When should I be pushing a little harder? When is it okay to let them lead, and all of that fun stuff. And feel free to stop me at any point if you have a question, if you need to say something, anything like that. Okay. So first and foremost, because I think this is probably everyone's number one concern, is showering and bathing. So the common hurdles that we see most often is that they believe they've already had a shower today. That's a big one, especially for people who have showered in the morning through most of their lives. They may not get up as early as they did for work nowadays. Their routine is a little more relaxed, but you know, at the point that it's 11 a.m. and all their life they showered by 8 a.m., they're thinking it's 11 o'clock. I've already taken a shower, whether or not that's true. Another one we hear all the time is, I don't need a bath. I haven't done anything. I'm not dirty. And so, of course, we know that might be true to an extent, but after several days of having not done anything, living on its own is enough to make you a little funky. So you might need one. I hear a lot, I'll do it later. I promise I'll do it later. I just don't want to do it right now. And then you keep hearing, I'll do it later. And so that can be a tough one. We frequently hear, I don't need your help. And again, that kind of comes back to that privacy concern issue. People have done it themselves their whole lives. And so they may not remember or recognize that they need more help at this time. Less pleasant, sometimes we see agitation and combativeness. So this can run a spectrum. This can be anything from like just generally being grumpy at you when you suggest that they get in the shower, all the way to being physically aggressive and maybe hitting at you or kicking at you, that sort of thing, if you try to get them in the shower. And then often what we see, even when we do get people in the shower, is that they might have limited participation and follow through. And so what that looks like is going to be different for every person. But I've seen people that say, oh, I can get in the shower by myself. I know what I'm doing. And they'll get in, but the water will just run and they'll never touch the soap. And then they'll stand there for a few minutes and they'll get out. Or maybe they're able to wash some parts, but not others. So they may think to wash the parts they can see, but they don't handle the back half. They may skip the lower parts of their body because those are harder for them to reach. We have one lady that she will, if you put soap on a washcloth for her, she will faithfully wash one spot. And that spot will be very, very clean, but the rest of her needs a little help. And so it's a spectrum of what we see. And I'm sure that you've noticed that with your own loved ones. So when we are dealing with these, we want to first and foremost be mindful of our approach. So I think all of you have either been with us for our previous meetings or have seen them. And we've talked a lot about the way you talk about something is a huge part of how successful you're going to be. So when I say be mindful of your approach, one thing you want to do is don't just hop in. Okay, so if you're just getting here, you don't want to say, hey mom, hey dad, let's get a shower. You look like you could use one. It's kind of like if you think about whenever somebody's asked you to do something or asked you for something and they haven't even greeted you yet, and you're like kind of like, that's pretty rude. I know I get that with my teenager a lot, like, hey mom, can you please buy me? And I'm like, you didn't even ask how my day was, you know?
Mm.
So it's kind of a similar mentality for them. So we want to lead with catching up with them, making some conversation, making sure that they feel comfortable, and maybe doing some more pleasant things first, spending a little quality time, and then warm up into the shower or the bath. We definitely want to choose different language. So if you notice that the second you say the word shower, they're like, oh, come on, you're always on about this. Might be the word shower that's the problem. It's funny, it's kind of a strange thing, but I can't tell you how much of a difference it makes when we ask people if they'd like to wash up.
Mm.
I don't know why it's different. If I had to guess, I would say that it's probably partly about that privacy aspect, that, showering is a big undertaking when you need help, and it can be an emotional undertaking when you need help. I think washing up maybe just sounds a little easier. It's also one of those things where washing up could mean a number of things. So they might think you're just asking them to wash their hands, but once you got them in the bathroom, it's a lot easier to get them to keep going. So once we start a task, it's a lot easier to keep going. And that's, true of all of us in general. So sometimes if we start with simpler language, or we kind of allude to it rather than being just forthright with it, it can do a little bit of good. Definitely, if you're really struggling, we want to use activities or the timing of things to our advantage. So if you're, before meal times is a great option, it's almost time for dinner. Let's get cleaned up before we go to dinner. Or if you're going out, that's a great opportunity. So maybe you've got a grandchild's birthday party, or you're going out to lunch, or even if you're just going for a car ride, we're getting ready to go out. Let's get cleaned up first. And suddenly there's motivation to do it. And that can make a world of difference. I know even some of our most challenging residents, usually they'll come around when they think they've got something special to get cleaned up for. And again, that kind of works on that, like, I'm not doing anything. What do I need to be clean for? So it kind of works to that point. We can also appeal to other needs. So particularly for our loved ones that may have chronic pain, like, back pain, hip pain, knee pain, often heat can be very comforting for that. So we might suggest a hot bath, and we know it's because they need to get clean, but we can pitch it to them like, oh, it seems like your back is really hurting you today. Maybe a hot bath will help kind of take some of the strain off of that. So that can always be a good one. And so I said here, we want to consider other factors. So this is part of that, where the person is, that personal preference and what's going on in their lives thing. So this is, do they not want to do it with me because they're embarrassed that they need the help? Is it because they're embarrassed that I'm going to see them in a state of undress? Is it because they're just not in the mood for it right now? Are they in pain? And the idea of standing there in the shower for 10 or 15 minutes just sounds awful. Any number of things. I know we've also had, I've had some individuals who have had family tragedies surrounding baths and showers, which sounds a little bit strange. But we did have one individual who, when she was a child, had a brother that passed away from drowning in a bathtub. You could never get her in a bathtub. She's terrified of it. And it's 90 years later, but that's still a significant emotional impact. So there's just always a lot of layers to people's resistance to get in the tub or to get in the shower. We definitely want to try to make it feel special if we can. So this can be probably a little challenging for you as family members. Because usually you're coming in with a mission, you know, you're coming in, you've got maybe an hour or two you plan to visit, you want to shower, you want to spend some quality time, maybe you want to get a meal, maybe you want to go out and do something for a little bit. And so it can feel very much like, I've got to move, we've got to get these things done. I think we have a little bit more leeway because we're here with them all day. So if you can, you know, add a little bubble bath, or, you know, get their favorite soap, or get a really nice, like fluffy scrubby thing, or, you know, whatever they like, maybe they like bath beads or that sort of thing. Go ahead and make it special. And that's one of those things that pays dividends long term. So the first time you do that, or the first couple of times you do that, it might not be a great motivator. They might still have that resistance. But over time, it builds a positive reinforcement that if they get that thing that they like at shower time consistently, it starts to build kind of automatic positive emotions surrounding the shower, surrounding the bath, that can make them more cooperative long term. So I don't know if any of you took like an intro to psychology course or anything like that at any point in your life, but if you've ever heard of Pavlov's dogs and how he trained them to do certain behaviors using food as a reward, it's because the brain just builds routines on its own, and that's still true even for our loved ones with dementia. And so if we can get them to have a positive emotional response, or a positive chemical response in their brain where they're getting something they enjoy, and it's releasing that serotonin or that oxytocin or whatever the feel good hormones for that situation for them are, then suddenly just knowing it's shower time automatically releases that, and suddenly they're happy with getting a shower. I know this is kind of unrelated, but similar concept. I know we've done that with medication a lot for people that don't like to take their medication. Give them a Reese's cup first. It warms everybody up. So things like that to make it special. Feel free to bring in chocolate. Never a bad plan. We definitely also want to honor their routines and preferences. So this is another one that can be challenging for you as family members, because you have work schedules, you have your own lives, you have a lot going on. You might not be able to drop everything and be here at 8 a.m. if that's the time they always preferred to shower. You may not be able to be here at 10 o'clock at night if that's the time they preferred to shower. But whenever we can, we want to incorporate their routine, the routine that feels natural to them in their lives, as much as possible. So if somebody has showered in the morning all their lives, that's how they wake up. You definitely don't want to do that to a person at bedtime or in the evening, where they're then going to be awake and not ready for bed. The opposite is also true. If you've always showered at night, that's how you wind down for bedtime. You don't want to do that in the morning when a person is just waking up, or in the afternoon when they still have a little bit of their day left. So we want to try to honor the routines that they already have. If we know they have a preference for a bath or a shower, or for a particular soap, or whatever the case may be, try to have those things available for them. We want to give them choices and control whenever we can. So this might be, would you rather a bath or a shower? That's an option. What temperature would you like your water? That sort of thing. Would you like bubble bath or bath beads today? You know, whatever the case may be, something that gives them a little bit of say in the matter. You can also do it. We need to get you a shower today. Do you want to do it now and get it over with? Or would you rather do it at the end of the visit and spend a little time together first? Now, disclaimer on that one, they may forget what they agreed to. So just know that that's a possibility. So they might say, oh, let's do it later. I'm enjoying catching up. And then they completely forgot they told you they would do it later. And it's hit or miss whether they'll believe you when you say they did. We definitely want to accept partial victories. So hygiene is one of those things that we tend to think of as all or nothing. You're clean or you're dirty. But we've found that there's a lot of shades of in between here. So of course, a full shower or a full bath is the ideal. But if a person is just not having that, but we can get them to wash their bodies, that's okay. Greasy hair never hurt anybody. It might not be pleasant to look at and it might not be pleasant to deal with, but that's not a safety concern.
Mm.
And I can tell you that a lot of our residents, hair is the sticking point for them. I don't want my head wet. I don't want you to pour water on my head. I don't want to get my face in the water. That's a big one for a lot of people. A partial victory might be at least getting them to wash the smelly bits, you know. My granny, who had dementia, referred to this very colorfully as a PTA bath, tits, and I'm sure you can assume what the A stands for. But yeah, so if we can get them to, you know, if the best we can do is, you know, wash those smelly areas, wash the creases, wash the feet, you know, the things that do tend to create smell, that's a start. If we can't get them in the shower, we can't get them in the bath, but they're willing to do a tub side wash up, that's something we frequently do, especially as I mentioned for like those residents that have fear of water for whatever reason. This can be a really good one. We might just really saturate a washcloth with soap and water and keep re-wetting it and let them sit there on the toilet or sit there on the shower chair, but without ever turning on the shower, and wash them up that way, and just wash one section at a time and rinse one section at a time. Maybe they'll lean over the sink or lean over the tub so that you can wash their hair, and that's more comfortable for them than actually getting in the tub or getting in the shower. So there's no shame in a partial victory. Okay. And reapproaching, I can't overstate the value of try again later. So what we often do is that our baths are scheduled based on people's preferences. So if your mom or dad always showered in the morning, that's when we try to give them their shower. And the upside of that is if they're like, not right now, we can come back in 20 minutes and try again. We can come back in an hour and try again. We can say, how about after lunch, and come back and try again. And we can do that all day long. And again, that's not necessarily something that you have the luxury of doing, but you can try again. And if you're going to be there for an hour, you can certainly try again in a half an hour, you know. So that's certainly an option. Or even if you're planning multiple visits, come back the next day. So sometimes planting a seed kind of is enough. So we've had residents will go in and say, you know, it's time for a shower. Would you like to get in? And they'll say, no, not right now. And then 10 minutes later, they'll have their bath towel and their shampoo in their hand. And they're like, you know, I think I really need a shower. So sometimes that's, you know, it's enough to say it and then let some time pass, let them kind of process it and then come back to it. So any questions, comments, concerns about any of that? No? Okay. So you're probably going to see a lot of overlap in some of these approaches, just because there is so much overlap. It's you know, it's all kind of connected. So with grooming, a lot of the struggles that we see is, oh, my hair is fine, I'm not going anywhere anyway. I'll do it later. That's a big one. Again, I don't need your help. Sometimes bathroom etiquette is part of the issue here. And so this is that they don't want, you know, you shouldn't be in here with me. Or I don't want to leave the door open while I do this, or any number of other things. It may be you know, I've seen a handful of residents that like to take care of some of their grooming habits while they go to the bathroom. So they might be sitting on the toilet and using the toilet and brushing their teeth, and they don't want you to be there for that. So that sort of thing. And again, the agitation or combativeness and the limited participation or follow through. So what I see with our ladies, especially a lot, is that they'll do the front of their hair, but the back will still be a mess because they can't see it and they can't comfortably reach it. So they don't do the back. Or maybe they brush the front teeth, but not the back teeth, kind of a thing. That sort of thing. So at those times, we want to be present to help support them, maybe give some verbal reminders to make sure that they're getting those spots that they might miss, or helping them, if that's appropriate, helping them with those spots that they might miss. So again, like I said, a lot of overlap. So we want to be mindful of our approach. Don't just dive right in with, all right, we got to comb your hair, we got to brush your teeth, we got to wash your face, we got to put on your makeup, we got to heat up the curling iron. That's a lot for me. And so for them, especially when they don't feel like they have anywhere to go, it seems like a lot of effort to put out, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. And also just realistically with the, you know, depending on where they are in their dementia, they can't remember that many steps in the directions either. So if you say, comb your hair, wash your face, brush your teeth, they might remember one of those three things. You know, so we have to make sure that we're kind of taking it a little more slowly. Offering choices and control. And this is a big one for this, is that we want to consider and correct for barriers. So the barriers are going to be different for the person, and they're going to be different over time, depending on where they are in their dementia. So a person in the early stages of dementia might just need a reminder that it's time to participate in these activities. So it might be as simple as going in and saying, hey, good morning, let's get your teeth brushed. And that's enough for them. A little later on, they might need you to make sure they actually make it to the bathroom, because by the time they've gotten to the bathroom, they forgot what they were going in there for. I know I'm guilty of that occasionally. Maybe not with the bathroom, but with the kitchen or, you know, the living room, that sort of thing. But maybe they've forgotten what they were for, and so they don't brush their teeth because they go to the bathroom and they think, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. And now that thought has been lost. It may be that they need setup. So sometimes the muscle memory for how to brush the teeth, how to brush the hair is there, but they don't remember the steps to get them there. So it might be, I need to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush for them. It might be, I need to get the comb out and make sure that it's visible to them, that sort of thing. So we might need to set things up. We might need to walk them through the process. And so if we need to walk them verbally through the process, we want to make sure that we do it in a way that's not reproachful or condescending. So, you know, so we want to try to keep it light, keep it conversational, make it seem normal. So maybe you go into the bathroom with them and you're saying like, oh, time to brush your teeth. Where do you keep your toothpaste? Can we get your toothpaste out? And that's kind of a casual way to get them to initiate, okay, I know where this thing is, and this is what I need to do first, is get the toothpaste, that sort of thing. So we can do that. Sometimes, especially in the later stages, we may find that they need what we refer to as the start button. And this is that we're actually physically going to get them started on the task and wait for muscle memory to kick in. So with brushing the hair, brushing the teeth, that sort of thing, we might set up the toothpaste, set up the brush, whatever it is, put it in their hand, and then hold their hand physically and help them start that scrubbing motion or start that combing motion, and then let go and let them continue. So kind of depending on where they are, sometimes that's enough to get them going. And unfortunately, in the very late stages of dementia, we may need to do the entirety of the task for them. So we just want to be prepared for that transition. But I think those barriers are things that we don't necessarily think of, because for us, those tasks are very simple. You know, brush your teeth is one task, comb your hair is one task. But for them, it's go to the bathroom, take out the things I need, know what to do with them, then actually do it. And each of those steps could be broken down into 10 to 15 more steps. So it's a much bigger undertaking. It requires a lot more mental energy, a lot more physical energy. And when the brain isn't connecting those dots as easily as it once did, it's almost like having to relearn to do it. And so we might need to give more support in ways that we hadn't thought of. And again, reapproach. We definitely want to avoid judgment. We want to come back to it later if they're resistant to it, but we don't ever want to do that in a way that makes them feel down. So it's not going to be like, oh, your breath really stinks, you got to brush those teeth. We're not going to say something like that. Now, if you have a humorous, joking relationship with your loved one, and that's the way you've always talked to one another, that's obviously a different story. I know some families do have like colorful senses of humor and can make jokes about that. So you're going to gauge that based on who your loved one is and what's normal for you. But we don't ever want it to sound as though we're disappointed in them or that they've done something wrong. If they're not able to do the task, or if they're not willing to do the task in the way that they always had. So, so just making sure again that we keep that casual conversational tone, that we try to keep things upbeat. Any questions about this one? No? Okay. So dressing is a pretty common challenge, and it comes with a number of pretty common challenges. So some of your loved ones have one or two of these, some of them have the whole gamut. It might depend on the day. So the things that we see the most often is that they wear the same clothes day after day. That might be that they have a favorite outfit and they don't remember that they wore it yesterday. So they're thinking, I'm going to wear my favorite shirt today. It might be that they took it off and folded it over their chair or at the foot of their bed the night before, thinking I'll put that in the hamper later. And then in the morning they think, oh, I sat this out last night to wear today. That's something we see a lot. We see people hang dirty clothes back up or fold dirty clothes and put them back in their dresser. That happens pretty frequently. We have people that refuse to get dressed. So I'm comfortable in my pajamas and I'm not going anywhere. So I'm not changing. And sometimes that's not necessarily time dependent. We'll have people come out at 3 a.m. and they're dressed and ready to go for the day, and then by 2 o'clock in the afternoon they're ready for pajamas again. And sometimes that cycle may happen 4 or 5 times a day. So we just kind of go with the flow. One of the things that we see, and so I referred to it here as creative self-laundering. This is often kind of gross. So this might be that they had a little bit of incontinence and they wanted to handle it without letting anybody know. So they washed their underwear in the sink and then sat it on the dryer or on the heating vent in their room to dry. I see that a lot. I've seen residents wash their clothes in the toilet, in the tub. None of that is great. Sometimes they have the episode of incontinence and they don't rinse it out. They just put it on the vent to dry, and so then the room can get a little bit stinky, and then they forget that that's why the underwear were there, and they may put them back on. So so that's a big one. So if you see clothing in unusual places, best to assume it's dirty. So And then again, agitation and combativeness and limited participation or follow through. So maybe they're willing to change their shirt, but not their pants. Maybe they're willing to put on socks, but not shoes, whatever the case may be.
I have a question.
Sure.
So there have been times when mom's had an accident.
Mhm.
And if I'm there, is it best to just put the pants in her hamper, or should I rinse them out in the shower? But then that means I'd have to put them in the hamper wet.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do.
Okay. So typically speaking, when somebody does have an accident, we don't want to put the soiled clothing in their hamper with their other clothes.
Okay.
One, we don't want it to sit there and start to smell everything up. Two, we don't want to put those germs into the hamper that we're then going to put clean clothes in later after we do their wash. So often what we do is if there's an accident, we try to do the laundry as soon as possible. So if the washer's available, you can always check with a member of our team, and they can throw it directly into the wash. That's absolutely an option.
Okay.
If someone else's belongings are in the washer, you can ask for a bag and we'll tie it up so that it's not soiling anything else and it's not producing an odor. And then we'll make sure that it gets into the wash as soon as possible once the wash is available.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So then again, for this one, we're gonna, again, the same things, offer choices and control. So if you're helping them get dressed, you're not going to pick one outfit for them and put it on them. If they're able, so in the very early stages of dementia, they're still able to make choices, they're still comfortable making choices, you can open the closet and let them choose what they're going to wear. A little further in, if they are having difficulty with decision making, we're going to do things and let them choose from those two. So you might present two outfits and say, would you like to wear your green sweater or your red blouse? And let them choose from that. We are going to, again, use that timing to our advantage. Let's get dressed. It's time to go down to breakfast. That sort of thing. We want to appeal to known preferences. So if you know what their favorite shirt is and it's clean, make sure that's one of the options. If you know they have a favorite pair of pajamas and it's bedtime, make sure that that's one of the options that you present to them. You're going to get a lot more cooperation if it's something that they want to wear. We have unorthodox laundry schedules. So as I mentioned in response to Linda's question, if we can get something in the wash right away, we will. For some of our individuals that prefer to wear the same clothes, if we can get it off of them, get them in their pajamas for the night, we'll throw it in the wash so that they can wear it the next day and it'll still be clean. So they might appear to be wearing the same dirty clothes day after day, but they may not be dirty because we're already taking that into consideration. So that is also something that you can do if for any of you that might do their wash or assist with their wash. Having multiples of favorite items is a thing that I cannot recommend enough. So if mom or dad has a favorite pair of pants, has a favorite t-shirt, has a favorite sweater, whatever the case may be, buy 2 or 3 of them. That way they can wear it every day and it's always clean. That way they can still wear it while it's in the wash. That way we can kind of sneak the dirty thing out and sneak the clean thing in, whatever the case may be. We suggest having either hampers with lids or hampers that aren't see-through. So we do see a handful of residents that will take clothes back out of the hamper. They might see it in there and think that's what I'm looking for and grab it. They might think that the wash is clean, especially some of our residents fold even their dirty clothes. And so then it can be difficult for them to remember that those clothes are dirty and not clean. So if the hamper is hard to see through or is hard to see into, it helps kind of it's literally out of sight, out of mind. So it takes the temptation to do that out of the, out of the equation. We have had situations where we've had people who consistently are taking clothes back out of the hamper and putting them away, where we may, go through the closet every so often and do a sniff test on everything and pull anything that doesn't quite smell fresh from the laundry. There have also been times when we've removed the dirty clothes hampers entirely from the room. So we'll help them change for the day. And then we'll take the dirty clothes and put it in their hamper in, in our spa room or in our storage room, just until they get out of the habit of doing that. And then we move the hamper back in once that routine has been broken. So that is something that we can do. So if that's something you see your loved one struggling with, we can find a space to keep their hamper and we can help support them in that if that's something you need. We definitely want to consider barriers to getting dressed. And a big one here is pain. A lot of our residents that are upset about changing clothes, that don't want to get dressed, that don't want to change, don't want to take off their pajamas, whatever the case may be, have back pain, have shoulder pain, have knee pain, have arthritis pain. So it may be that they don't want to change because they struggle with the buttons and the zippers because their hands hurt from arthritis. It may be that the act of bending their knees to put on pants is painful. It may be that the act of reaching behind them to fasten a bra or to pull a shirt over their head or something like that is causing shoulder pain or aggravating shoulder pain. So in a situation like that, we recommend two things. One, if we can do some pain medication or pain intervention beforehand. So, maybe if they have chronic back pain, we're going to give them a heating pad for 20 minutes or so before we get them dressed. If they've got arthritis, maybe we're going to give them some Tylenol or Aleve or whatever they take for arthritis pain about 20 minutes, 30 minutes before they get dressed. So it helps take the edge off so that they're able to move a little more easily. And I cannot stress enough the value of easy on, easy off clothing. So what that looks like is very different for the person. Okay, so a person with knee pain that struggles to lift their leg to put it into pants might benefit from having a lot of skirts and dresses. Might benefit from having pants with elastic waistbands that they can get a little further stretched so that they don't have to bend their knees quite as much to get them in those pants. A person with arthritis pain in their hands might not do so well with buttons and zippers, but they're great with pullovers. A person with chronic shoulder pain isn't going to do great with pullovers. They might prefer buttons and zippers. So we want to look at who our loved one is and where their pain is and what works for them when we make the decision for easy on and easy off clothing. We also want to think about some other types of barriers. So this is kind of strange. This is a relatively recent experience. We had a new resident come in not too long ago, and her family had told us she wears the same clothes for days on end. She only gets dressed when we come and change her. So that's going to be a struggle. And we're like, okay, yeah, no problem. We go through that with everybody. If we have a lot of people that have that struggle. And so as we were getting to know her, she never gave us a hard time about changing her. And we thought that was strange because often you're the experts on your loved ones. So if you're telling us this is a hard thing for them and they're not giving us a hard time about it, that's concerning. Because that means that they're not comfortable with us, they don't trust us, or that we're completely missing something, or we're having a totally different experience than you are. And usually that's not the case. So in talking to her and getting to know her a little more, it turns out that the hanging bar in her closet was too high for her to reach. She's a petite little thing. And so she wasn't changing her clothes because she couldn't get them out of the closet. And so when we lowered the closet bar so that the clothing was easier for her to reach, suddenly she changes herself every day. And that's not to say that that'll always be the case. But so when I say think about what barriers might be there, it might be completely off the wall things like this that are outside of our, like outside of our norm that we don't even think to look at. So we want to think, are the dresser drawers too heavy and hard for them to open? Is the closet bar too high? Is it out of sight, out of mind? And once the closet's closed, do they forget the clothes are in there? I've seen that happen. So for a person like that, where normally we want to keep the closet door closed so that it's not a tripping hazard or a safety issue in that respect. For that person, we might want to leave a closet door open so they can see that they have those options. So just like things like that. Any questions about any of the dressing suggestions?
Maybe one, Courtney, is with dignity and clothing protectors.
Okay.
How do you feel?
So this is a great question. For those of you that might not be familiar, clothing protectors are the term that we use for what you might traditionally call a bib. So bibs are for babies, bibs are for children. They're not for our loved ones who are adults and who have been able to feed themselves their entire lives. So I think that these are a person by person basis. For the people that need them, there is a ton of value to them because it's better for their dignity to wear that item for the short time that they're in a meal than to wear the stained clothing for the duration of the day. So for the people that need them, I'm definitely an advocate for them. I am a believer that they should not look like bibs. So if they do, it's not a problem. I understand that it is hard to find those sorts of things for adults, especially, and so that can be a challenge.
Well, what about if you offered them a full apron?
Yeah,
I mean, some of them are really festive looking, or they have funny sayings on the front. They're for men, they're for women, they're unisex. So maybe they would find that less offensive. I mean, I know if I'm having a tomato sauce meal, I keep my apron on because I don't want to splash on my own clothes.
Yeah, I know. This is a story I tell the residents frequently because they always get a kick out of it. But I took an apron to my wedding because I knew there's no way I'm coming out of this and not covered in stuff. Like,
It's great.
So they love that story, and especially for those that do use clothing protectors, that's a story I use sometimes if they do seem uncomfortable with it to help normalize it a little. But yeah, an apron is a great suggestion for a normal looking article of clothing that still provides the same support. One of the other things I've seen, and this requires a little bit of craftiness, but if any of you are handy with a sewing machine, it's a really phenomenal idea is that you take their old clothes that have worn out. So an old shirt that they don't wear anymore, maybe it's, maybe it's stained, maybe it's got holes, and cut the back below the neckline. So it still has a neck hole and it still has a shirt front and maybe even sleeves, depending on what it is. So like if it was dad and he had a button down shirt that he wore all the time, leave it buttoned, leave the sleeves on it, keep the collar, cut the back off, and put a little Velcro there at the back of the neck. And suddenly this is a thing we can slide over his arms and put on him, or slide over mom's arms and put on her. And we know it's a clothing protector, but to a casual observer, that's clothes.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the first time I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's genius. That was my $1 million idea that I got too late. Yeah. But I think that's probably like the best case scenario, but it requires you to have a little bit of skill in that area. So it's kind of a trade-off. But I think an apron is a great idea. Towels often can be used to make clothing protectors. I know that's pretty common, or towel material. I would say if you are not crafty, make sure you're buying adult clothing protectors. They're going to be much larger. So where a baby bib is really only covering maybe this much, the adult clothing protector pretty much covers shoulder to shoulder and all the way down to the navel. And so again, it creates a solid visible surface so that a casual observer walking past won't notice that they've, got a bib on, got a clothing protector on, because it may look to somebody who's not looking closely like it's just a shirt. So all of those are options. Of course, tucking the napkin in is always, that's a pretty common one. I know that was a thing that my grandparents did at every meal their entire lives anyway. So as they got into their senior years and needed that, it was natural for them and it wasn't a dignity issue because they had just always done it. Big seafood people. So if you eat a lot of crabs, you tend to be okay with the lobster kind of thing.
That's right.
So yeah, I definitely think that they're worthwhile and that there's a way to do them well for the people that need them. Did that hopefully answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
All right.
Good ideas.
Good. All right. Anybody else questions about the dressing component? No? Okay. All right. So then diet and habit changes. This is maybe not a traditional hygiene topic, but it is often a thing that we see change as people progress through their dementia. And it's also a thing that we see a lot of families struggle with in many of the same ways that they do with hygiene. So that's why I decided to include it. So what we might see is loss of appetite. We might see that they've kind of lost the concept of time and when is a normal time to eat. So they may eat at unusual times. They may forget that they have eaten already and want to eat again. They may forget that they haven't eaten and swear that they just had a full meal and they haven't eaten since dinner yesterday. They may have changes in their eating habits. And this is a big one that I see, especially for those of us who have loved ones that were always very physically fit or very self-conscious about their appearance or about their weight. It can be hard to see those loved ones suddenly eating candy like it's going out of style. So that sort of thing. So we may see changes in eating habits. We might see weight loss or weight gain. And again, we may see limited participation or follow through. So they may not be able to feed themselves with the ease that they once did. So we definitely want to offer favorite foods whenever we have that possibility. So I don't know about you, but I know that I struggle with leftovers, that eating the same thing every day for a couple of days is a little rough for me. Thanksgiving is the one and only exception. But for many of them, that's not the case because they don't remember that they ate that the previous meal. And I can tell you, particularly with this generation, where a lot of them, survived the Great Depression, you can't underestimate the value of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I don't know why that is, but almost all of them, that's their favorite thing to eat. So they won't turn one down. And we've had a handful of residents in the course of my time here that they would eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich 2 or even 3 meals a day and be happy with that. And we would offer them other things and they would turn them down because nothing was going to beat that peanut butter and jelly. And that's fine. So we want to offer favorite foods, even if they've had them a ton. We want to offer food when they're hungry. Again, so like weight loss is a common thing we see as our loved ones age. And so we want to, if they're hungry, we want to take advantage of that and give them food right then. And I'll tell you, I've had residents that get up from the breakfast table and go to the bathroom and come back and swear they haven't eaten a bite. And I'm going to give them a brand new plate with just as much food on it that time as I did the first time, because they might only eat a couple of bites because once they get started, they might realize they're full. and that's fine, but they might eat it all. And especially with some of our residents that struggle with this sense of timing, they may skip meals at other times because they think I've just eaten and they really haven't. And so if I can get 2 meals in them now, it's going to make up for the one they missed yesterday or for the one they might miss later today. So it tends to come out in the wash. So offer foods when they're hungry. And this is, so in previous meetings, we've talked about kind of going on the journey and being present with our loved one in whatever their reality in the moment is. We definitely still want to do that. So even if you know they've just eaten, they haven't. If they say they haven't, they haven't. No need to correct that. Just offer them a snack, offer them a sandwich, offer them whatever, whatever's handy.
If I ask my mother what she's had to eat, she swears that you never feed her.
Yes.
Ever.
Yeah.
So now we just joke about it like, oh my God, Mom,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to really make a big deal out of that. I'm going to have to raise some heck that they're not feeding you. And she's like, nope, I never eat.
Mhm. Yeah,
My
we hear that a lot.
mother-in-law, she's just the opposite. Oh, there's so much food. I can't eat all this food. It's like you think they were like,
Yeah. Those are the two extremes that we see all the time. So, especially with breakfast and lunch, because they're so close, they finish eating breakfast around 9:30, and then by 11:30, the early eaters are already ready for lunch. So we'll hear a lot of like, I just ate, I'm not ready. And
Yeah.
then we have 2 or 3 other residents that will consistently say, I haven't eaten in 4 days. Yeah, my favorite, one time a resident said, I'm starving. And I was like, okay, what can I get you? And she was like, whatever you have. They haven't fed me in a month. I've been here for a month and they haven't fed me.
Oh,
And I know she's eaten, but it's one of those things where I was like, I hope nobody hears her and thinks that's true. I promise we feed them at least 3 times a day, usually far more. But yeah, absolutely. We want to honor that reality. And by all means, go with the journey and feel free to throw us under the bus. If they say we haven't fed them in days, go ahead and say, oh my God, those monsters, what horrible people. I'm going to go give them a piece of my mind and get you a sandwich. And then come to us and we will get you something for them to eat. I am 100% fine with being the bad guy in that reality. It gets them to eat. Okay. Because that's the priority. So please feel free to make me the villain.
my mother with the caffeine obsession too, that that.
Yes. Yeah.
You are the bad guy with the caffeine. Yes, I know.
I am the bad guy with the caffeine. So for those of you who may not know this, typically we don't have caffeine. So we don't have caffeinated coffee or tea. Typically, because it is mood altering and it tends to aggravate a lot of the anxiety that they naturally experience with dementia. So typically speaking, we don't offer caffeine. We also don't have any blanket rules. So there's no caffeine ever. That's not a thing. So if a person is able to handle it, if a person prefers it, we have access to it. We can get it. We can and do give them what they want. Sometimes they believe us, sometimes they don't. So, but that's really true for any food preference. So if we have it, we will give it, and if they want it, and as long as it's not a danger to them. But kind of on that same topic of like, what is a danger as far as food is concerned, one of the things that I see a lot, and this kind of goes hand in hand with that, changes in eating habits. So I know, for example, my granny had diabetes, and when I was a kid, she never had sweets in the house, ever. It was like a really big deal for there to be candy. And as she got older, she developed a preference for sweets, which was not so great because she had diabetes as she got older. But then there were bowls of M&Ms on every table in the house. There were peppermints in every pocket of every shirt and every pair of pants that she ever owned. She had gummy bears in her purse. She never went anywhere without candy. She had ice cream every night before bed. And so when you think, okay, diabetes is dangerous, should we be
Right.
allowing this?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Mhm.
And that seems really counterintuitive, but the answer is yes.
Mhm.
So the research literature overwhelmingly confirms that weight loss is more dangerous than high blood sugar, that weight loss is more dangerous than high blood pressure. So the weight loss is more dangerous than, and I could go on. So anytime we think they're having too much salt, they're having too much sugar, they're eating too much, because trust me, we feed them a lot. You know, weight loss is our biggest enemy. So if you ever have that uncertainty, should I bring dad a couple of donuts? Should I bring mom a pint of ice cream? She's gonna eat the whole thing in one sitting. I just know it. That's fine. It's fine because you're not doing it all the time. You know, if they're eating 16 pints of ice cream a day, maybe we're gonna have a different conversation, but that's not typically happening. So we just want to be kind of conscious of that the thing that gets them to eat, even if it's a thing we would prefer them not eat, is still valuable because the eating is important. And especially as our loved ones get further progressed in their dementia, they may struggle more with the act of feeding themselves, not only because they may lose the coordination and the muscle memory that helped them feed themselves, but also realistically, especially in the very late stages, they lose the ability to swallow or even to chew. And so we want to encourage eating frequently because we want to preserve that ability. So that's kind of a weird thing that we may not necessarily think of, but it's okay for them to eat often because we want them to keep eating. We want the body to keep those skills. So then we want to consider that unusual food preferences or unusual eating habits are okay. And again, this is one of those situations where we want to make sure that we don't sound judgmental, condescending, reproachful, any of that. So our taste buds change as we get older. So I mentioned my granny who never ate candy suddenly loved it, had it all the time as she got older. Our taste buds get desensitized and can even die off as we age. And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that our sweet taste buds are the ones that stick around the longest. And so at a point in our lives, other foods get hard to taste. And so we need to add a lot of salt. We need to add a lot of sugar so that we get any kind of enjoyment out of eating them, because otherwise food is just texture. And I don't know if you've ever experienced the texture of food without the flavor of food, but many of them are unpleasant if you think about them purely from that standpoint, you know? So we do see a lot of people that prefer and lean overwhelmingly towards sweets. And when we need them to eat real food for nutrition purposes, we can use that to our advantage. So we have put grape jelly on ham sandwiches because that way they can taste it and they're getting the actual food they need, but now they're willing to eat it because they can taste it. We have poured maple syrup on scrambled eggs or on cheeseburgers because same thing, it'll get them to eat it. We've put sugar packets on slices of pizza. Like, it sounds crazy, but when you have a resident who hasn't eaten, when you have your loved one who hasn't eaten in days, you know, or they believe they haven't eaten in days, as the case may be, and and they're staring at that food, but they just aren't interested in it. And all it takes is a pack of sugar or a packet of jelly to make them eat and to make them happy with what they eat. It's okay if people give you funny looks when you're out to dinner. It's not their business. So a dear friend of mine, her grandmother put grape jelly on every single meal in her last years of life.
Mm.
Ham sandwiches, Thanksgiving dinner, a steak, a chicken parmesan, whatever it was, there was always grape jelly on it. But she ate well. So,
Mhm.
you know, so it's okay for that to happen. But we do want to consider that realistically, when we are adding sugar, when we are adding jelly, when we are adding those things, that we may see weight gain, which can of course have its own detriments. You know, for our people with joint pain, it may make it difficult for them to walk. It, you know, it can exacerbate pain, that sort of thing. So we're always trying to walk a line. But again, weight loss is the real enemy. That's usually when we start to see our loved ones with dementia decline really significantly, is when they start losing weight. So that's our primary focus. When we do see people starting to lose weight, it can be very tempting to go the way of food supplements that are super densely packed with nutrition and calories. So these are your boosts, your ensures. For any of you who might be familiar with magic cups, which are somewhere between vanilla ice cream and vanilla pudding, but they have about 6,000 calories in a half a cup of them. They're very calorie intensive. So those are all like medical grade food supplements that you can absolutely use. But whenever possible, we want to try to use real food supplements. So we're going to offer a chocolate milkshake before we offer a chocolate boost, because that's a real food and it's a natural food. So they're more likely to recognize it than they are that weird plastic bottle that's unfamiliar to them. If they need more calories, we're going to throw some cream cheese in the mashed potatoes instead of just leaving them plain, because that's a good way to add a little extra. Throw butter on it, throw jelly on it, throw cream cheese at it, honey. Those are our go-tos. So if you do notice weight loss, if you are trying to get your loved one to gain a little weight, bring their favorite foods and fatten them up. Go ahead and add the sour cream and the cream cheese and the butter and whatever you can think of that's gonna make it extra delicious, but also extra fattening. So that's absolutely something we can do. And we want to use visual food cues. So if you're bringing something for your loved one to eat, bring something for yourself as well. Because realistically, sometimes our loved ones need to see other people eating in order to be able to eat themselves. This is a thing I cannot stress enough, because especially coming through COVID, we saw so much weight loss and so much muscle atrophy and so much general decline from being in their rooms, purely because they weren't eating, because they didn't have anybody to eat with. And part of it is the social element of eating, but part of it is that they need the reminder of what it looks like to eat. And they need the reminder that the food is here and that it's for eating and that it's time for me to eat. So if you are bringing something for them, bring something for yourself as well and eat with them. And then especially as our loved ones progress in their dementia, we want to offer assistance in a non-judgmental way. And we want to offer assistance in a way that protects their dignity. So if your loved one needs help cutting up their food, preferably you're going to cut it before they see it, you know, so that they don't feel as though they need to be taken care of like a small child. So if it's something you're bringing with you, maybe you cut it up, you know, at home before you come. If they, or, you know, maybe you're cutting yours and you say, oh, mom, let me take care of that. Or dad, let me take care of that for you while I'm working on mine, since I'm already in, you know, in this mode, kind of a thing. So you can make it seem casual. If they need assistance with like physically eating. So again, that start button thing that we talked about with the like teeth brushing, hair combing, that sort of thing, you might need to take their hand and stick the food and then raise the fork to their mouth a time or two before they can do it on their own. You may need over time to physically feed them. And so what I'll say is if it comes to that with your loved ones, if that's something you need to do, sit with them at the table, eat with them at the table, because sitting beside them and feeding them is more natural and less noticeable than hovering over them the way you would with a child in a high chair kind of a thing. You don't want to be standing there next to them and popping spoonfuls in their mouth and like, here comes the airplane, like that sort of thing. We're not going to do that with our loved ones because it's demeaning. So we want to sit next to them so that we're on their level, so that it feels more natural. And if we're feeding them while we're feeding ourselves, they're eating with us. It's a joint process. It's not me alone needing help to do this thing I should be able to do myself. It also looks better from the perspective of an outside observer. So you're protecting their dignity to other people, because somebody walking past that interaction might not notice that you're feeding them if you're sitting down beside them. They're just going to think that's a family sitting down to a meal. Where if they see you hovering above the person, they're going to know that person needs help. And so it just gives away more about their situation than we might think of, especially in a situation where we're distracted or we are in a hurry and we're just thinking, got to get it done, So we want to make sure we're sitting with them, we're taking time with them in a way that protects their dignity. So any questions, comments about any of that? No? All right. So then our last thing today is when should I be concerned? I think this is really the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about. Like, how do I know a hygiene issue is a problem? How do I know a diet issue is a problem? When is it, me holding on to who I think they should be and where I think they should be? And when is it me being genuinely concerned for their safety? So this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just a lot of the things that I see the most frequently. So, and this is not to say that any of these things are not concerning. So if you have a concern related to your loved one's hygiene and their well-being and their diet, your concern is 100% founded and justified. So this is not to say if you're worried about something on this less concerning list, that's not to say you're overreacting and you're crazy and you need to let it go or give it up. It's just to say that this is one of those areas where we can afford to compromise, where the more concerning areas are places where we really shouldn't be compromising. Okay. So less concerning, when a person refuses daily showers or baths. I realize that this is a thing that many of them probably did throughout their younger days. I realize that this is a thing that many of us probably do in our day-to-day lives. But we're also, busy and working and running around just when they were younger and showering every day. Realistically, they do have less activity. So they're probably not building up the same amount of sweat and grime and whatever now in their routine as they were then. And the other part of this is that daily showers and baths can actually be detrimental at a point for our loved ones. So I'm sure you've noticed, maybe even in yourselves, because I know I frequently look at my hands and think they look like my mom's, like they just look a lot older than I think they should. Yeah. So you've probably noticed maybe in yourself and certainly in your loved ones that their skin is not the same as it once was. Often it's thinner, often it gets that kind of crepe paper look to it. We can see through to their veins may protrude, things like that, because a lot of our fatty tissue kind of breaks down as we get older. So the skin does physically get much thinner. That's why they're always cold. They've got a lot less protection than they once had. So daily showers, especially hot ones, and daily baths, especially hot ones, can be very hard on that thinner skin and can actually cause it to break down further. And so if we're doing daily showers and baths on our loved ones with thinner skin, we may see frequent cuts, frequent bruises, things like that, because their skin just can't handle that, that pressure that consistently. Refusing hair washes and haircuts. Okay. Again, greasy hair never hurt anybody. It doesn't look so great. It doesn't smell so great. It's maybe not our favorite thing. And of course, in a perfect world, we would want to have our loved ones' hair washed all the time, or have it cut and kept and, you know, like nice and neat and orderly for them. But realistically, this isn't ever going to cause them harm. So if it's a situation where they are going to be in undue distress because you're pushing the issue and they are just not having it, this is an area where it's okay to let it go and try again later. Okay. I can tell you they always cave in eventually. So, so their hair will get washed, their hair will get cut. It just might not be on the schedule that we want. And this is, again, one of those situations where making it special, getting the barber to do it or the hairdresser to do it, suddenly it's a whole nother conversation, because I don't want you to wash my hair. Gross. But I get to go to the salon and hang out with the other ladies. That's a great idea. Let's do that. So even for those of you with gentlemen family members, they get to go to the salon and hang out with the ladies, count them in. So yeah, so that's definitely one of those situations. Also less concerning when their clothes don't match. So this is, I think, a hard one for those of us whose loved ones have always been very on point with our physical appearance. So I've got a lot of ladies and gentlemen here that in their younger days, you would never see them not dressed to the nines. Everything matches. Every outfit has a set of shoes. Maybe it has special jewelry or a hat that matches it, and everything is pristine and put together from top to bottom. And as they get older, they just can't be bothered with that as much anymore. And that's very hard, I've seen, for a lot of family members when they start not wearing the jewelry anymore, or when they stop wearing the outfits that are meant to go together and instead start pairing that shirt with a different pair of pants. It may not look as pretty, but if they're clothed and they're clean, and most importantly, that they chose it themselves, that outfit is perfect. Okay, this is one of those big dignity issues. And I think this one is a hard one, especially when we're taking our loved ones out in public. So maybe you are taking them to a birthday party or out to dinner, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, they look ridiculous and people are going to see them like this. And we may think that's a dignity issue, but they're not registering what other people are thinking. We are. And they are thinking, I chose this, and this is a decision I made in my life. And that control for them may be more important than what other people think. So just something to kind of be aware of. When they refuse part of a task or a routine. So this is, I'll get in the shower, but I'm not washing my hair. Or I'll brush my teeth, but I'm not combing my hair. I'm not curling my hair. I'm not, you know, whatever. They do part. Again, those partial victories, still victories, take them, run with them, celebrate them. So that's okay. And when the person eats the same food repeatedly or prioritizes comfort foods and sweets. So we talked about this a lot, but the important thing is that they eat, you know, so if they eat the same stuff all the time because that's what they want to eat, that's okay. The times we do want to be concerned, if the person is in distress, okay, so maybe you have that loved one that always dressed to the nines and everything matched and everything looked beautiful and pristine and perfect, and they still want to look that way, but they just can't make it happen on their own, and they're upset about it. We've had those experiences too. That's a time when it's acceptable to be concerned. We want to make sure that they match who they feel they are.
Mm.
So we want to support them in dressing the way that they want to and they're comfortable. So if they're distressed, it's okay for us to be distressed and to want to do more about it. If there are issues with body odor, so at the point that we smell, there's there's certainly bacteria, there's probably some dirt in some not so great places, and this can be a skin breakdown issue where, if we have too much dirt and grime on our skin, we don't want to overwash, we don't want to underwash. So if we have too much going on our skin, that can also cause problems, chafing, rashing, things like that can make skin breakdown happen. So that's definitely something we want to be aware of. If they struggle frequently with incontinence. So obviously if a person is frequently soiling themselves, whether it's urine or bowel or both, we definitely want to try to keep those people clean. For those situations, I'll say the best time to implement that shower or that bath is when it happens. Because nobody wants to sit in that. And I see that even in our most progressed residents, they might hate to shower any other time, but if their depend is soiled or if their pants are soiled, they want to be clean. And so that's a good time to take advantage of the opportunity to shower them or to wash them up, and again, partial victory counts here. So if they've had an episode of incontinence and the most we can do is wash that area, that's still accomplished the goal. Okay. And that's still protected them and kept them safe. Again, when safety hazards occur, such as skin breakdown. So if we are seeing rashing and chafing and things like that in areas that aren't being washed as well as they could be, that's definitely when we want to make sure that we're being more diligent about it. And when weight loss and frequent falls occur. So I mentioned a lot that weight loss is our enemy, and often a partner to weight loss is frequent falling, because as we're not getting enough nutrition, our muscles aren't getting what they need to support us. We're feeling more tired. We don't have the energy to support our own weight. And so what we see a lot is that as people eat less, they fall more. So when we see that, that's definitely one of those times where we want to be pushing those favorite foods, adding extra fat and nutrition into the foods that we can get them to eat, because even empty calories are still calories and they have value, and that's going to help keep them safe. Okay. Does that make sense? Any questions, any thoughts?
No.
All right.
It was very good, as always.
Yeah.
It's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Oh, you're welcome. So I know this was a big one for a lot of you, so I hope you got the answers that you were looking for.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Good.
thank you.
Good. Anybody have suggestions for other areas that you think would be helpful?
I don't know if this is a whole topic, but lately my dad has been asking where like his brother is, where his parents are, like, and all are passed.
Mm.
So the other night when we were there, or Sunday, I guess it was when we were there, he asked about his brother, and he said, and I said, he's gone. And because usually he remembers after I say that. And this time he kind of got a little upset and was like, well, why didn't anybody tell me? So I guess you did kind of cover answering them in other sessions, but I don't know, like how to answer them without upsetting them. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we can definitely go over that again in more detail. So the quick answer to help you in this moment is, as a general rule, if you see, he's in that weird in between stage where sometimes he knows and sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah.
So if he's given you any indication that he knows in that moment, it's okay to talk about their passing.
Okay.
If he's given you indication in that moment that he doesn't know, go with that.
Okay.
So if he's saying, where's my brother? That's a good sign. that he doesn't remember that he's passed. And so
Okay.
you're gonna use that therapeutic fibbing, like, oh, he's out, he's out on a hunting trip right now, because I know that was a big thing for them. So that sort of thing.
Okay.
Or maybe he's at work, or depending on the time, and whatever makes sense for
Okay.
your dad and his brother.
Yeah.
If you're not sure, tell the truth once, lie the rest of the time.
Got
So,
Okay. Yep.
yeah, so if you're here for a couple of hours and he asks 20 minutes in and you tell him the truth and he gets upset, and then 20 minutes later he forgets and asks again, go ahead and fib.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Yep.
All right. But we can definitely go more into detail with that.
Okay.
Anybody else?
How about encouraging reminiscence?
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can do that too. So that's another one, kind of like Sandy said, that we've covered a little bit in some other,
Yeah, yeah.
but we can talk about that in more detail. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So I would say for now, for your kind of quick to the point, start with stories you know, and you supply some of the details and leave some gaps, and let her fill in the blanks.
Mm.
Know that the details might change from time to time, and you may hear details that aren't true, or you may hear details that are maybe different or embellished, I'll say, from previous times you've heard the story. But just to go with that, because that's the reality in that moment. But whenever possible, we want to make it conversational and make it more about the storytelling, not so much like questioning. And if we do have to ask questions, we want to ask open-ended questions, not questions with one right answer. So, so what was your wedding like is a very different question than what year were you married? And so I see a lot that people get very distressed when questions have one right answer and they don't know it and they think they should.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, two takeaways from the previous ones that I found interesting was the one about the balloons, the different, I went to that website and I watched it. I found that very, very helpful, because she's like that. Well, why don't I remember this, or why don't I remember that? And well, you just, now there's somebody else's balloons. They'll remember for you. It's was very, very interesting. And the analogy of the turtle,
Okay.
that was
Yeah.
excellent. I've used that at work a couple times when people have said to me, well, let's just go back and start over again. No, move it forward instead. But
Okay.
that's what you don't want to take it back to where it was, because it's trying to go the other direction. Keep going forward. That was excellent.
Oh, good. I'm
Yes,
so
thank
glad.
you.
I'm so glad that's helpful. It's
Yes.
funny how much of this applies in other situations sometimes. So I'm glad you found use for it.
Yes. Thank
And
you.
I don't know if all of you are familiar with what he's talking about with the balloons, but there's a children's book called The Remember Balloons. And you can find videos of people reading it aloud on YouTube. So you can either buy the book or you can just hear it for free on YouTube. But it is a children's book that is meant to describe the challenges of dementia to children who may be experiencing it with a grandparent. And it's very poignant, it's very accurate. I know that the first time I read it, I cried the whole time, so prepare yourself mentally for that. But if you have little children in your lives, or even if you yourself just want to get a change of perspective on how to look at it, I definitely recommend just a quick YouTube search of the Remember Balloons. All right. Anybody else? Or anything else?
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. I hope you have a great evening.
You too.
Yes.
Take care.